Welcome to the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. Today, we are going to talk about how to prep for big rides. And because of that, we have Hannah Otto with us. Hannah, you just did Leadville. We're going to talk about that. You also, live today, people can go check it out. There's a film all about the White Rim FKT, or fastest known time, that you just took, which gives you the Triple Crown for Utah, for this southern Utah Moab area, which is so cool. Cocopelli. You also have the whole enchilada. And then now, which not just down, but climb up and then down. And now you have White Rim. We have some athlete questions. If you're watching this right now, you can submit your questions. You can do so down below in the comments. And some of those questions have to do with big days like this and how to prep for them. So congrats, Hannah, on your FKT. Before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about Leadville. We had a special episode earlier in the week where I talked to Keegan about his performance and we compared it against mine, which is pretty funny, the concept there. But just the same, I want to talk to you about your performance. You were 6th overall in the women's field. You're 5th in the Lifetime Grand Prix. 7 hours and 23 minutes and 45 seconds. I can't imagine lobbing 20 minutes off of my time that I did, because that's basically exactly what you did. That's insane. What went well? I want to go over that, and then what you're going to do differently next time. So let's just jump right into it. What did go well today? Because your post was, I saw your post on Instagram. You can go follow Hannah's social channels after this. You were satisfied with the day.
Yeah, I think obviously I've won this race before, so I think sometimes the outside expectation is that nothing will be good enough other than first. And while I certainly push for that, I do think it's important for people to hear that you don't get to win every race. You aim for it, you strive for it, but it doesn't always happen. And so being happy with the result doesn't mean that you're content or satisfied or not striving for more. It just means, hey, this is what I was capable of today, and that's good, and I'm happy with that. So yeah, go ahead.
I've got a question. This is a great point. How did you manage that before the race, though? It's one thing to manage it after the race, which it's a totally different animal, but before the race, having won it before, how do you go into this thing without feeling immense pressure that makes it so that if you're not in the lead, you feel like you're failing?
I will admit it's really hard. That is something that I think people overlook, including myself. Coming up through sport, I remember standing on start lines, looking at former winners of races, thinking to myself, if only I was them, if only I had won this before, then I would be confident. And now many of the races I do, I have won at some point or time. And I realized that you don't magically just feel like you can win it every time just because you've done it before. Everyone is battling some form of expectation or desire on that start line, and everyone is nervous because of it. And so I think it's a variety of factors. One, I think it's an understanding that consistently good is what leads to great. And so for me, being 6th overall, this is my 5th Leadville and my 5th time in the top 10 in a row. And so I have consistently competed at the front of this race. And as long as I keep doing that, I know that eventually I will win again. And that's great. I can be happy with that. I can hold my head high for that, for sure. And then on top of that, I think it's creating those process goals throughout, right? Where I can't control what other people are doing. I can't control where they are. I can't control how fast they start. I can't control what equipment they've chosen and what I've chosen and all those little things that do spin us out on the start line when we look around and go, oh my gosh, I've made a different decision than somebody else. But I can control the things that I've written down as the things that I want to execute. And as long as I do those things when I cross the finish line, it would be foolish to be anything other than happy.
Yeah. Well said. What did you do particularly well this year at Leadville?
Yeah, I felt like I love this race so much. I felt like overall the race went really well. I was super happy with my equipment selection. I had a very light setup this year, which I was super pleased with. My bike was around 19 and a half pounds.
Holy cow.
So
Was it the hardtail, the
it was the
scale?
Scott scale. Yep. So
Wow.
I feel like I really nailed that equipment selection. And I also feel like I felt quite good in the altitude. I do the get there last minute strategy, and I feel like I was able to um, feel really good on race day as well. And I think some of that also came from the fact that I did go to Leadville 3 weeks before and I pre-rode the course and set some of my plans in terms of I didn't that operation of going 3 weeks before and then coming home in between wasn't just about pre-riding the course, which it might have looked like from the outside. It was also optimizing things like, hey, what do I want to eat in the morning? What does this hydration status make me feel like? What does that hydration status make me feel like? How am I responding to the altitude at this power or that power? Figuring out some of those power zones. And so I felt like that preparation of understanding my body and how it was responding to the altitude was really great for this effort. And I
Can I
think,
ask one
yeah,
clarifying question here? When you say you pre-wrote it, did you do all of it all in one, or did you break it down into multiple days?
I did 3 days of pre-riding, and across those 3 days, I essentially rode the course 1.5 times. So I did it in segments, but overlapping segments where I did several of the significant sections twice, like I did Columbine twice, Powerline twice, those type of things, just to have the opportunity to once again, dial in pacing, dial in what happens if I go faster here or slower here. How does that impact my sensations or my time? And so I felt really well prepared. And I think that definitely helped me in the race. You know, I was really pleased with, once again, in the race, I moved through the field. I stuck
Mhm.
to a solid pacing plan, and I think it paid off in the end in terms of catching people all the way to the finish. But in terms of what I'm going to do differently next time is I think that the way this race is running in the pros, fortunately, unfortunately, the pacing strategy seems to potentially no longer be the winning strategy. It can give you really strong, consistent results, but I think that we are just starting so fast at this point that that is becoming an element of the race that is needed. Like just that really hard, no holding back sort of start to get in that front group across pipeline.
This is a really interesting point. I feel like Dunning-Kruger wouldn't be the right term for this, but the curve is the same in the sense that, like, if you are like a Keegan and you have what I perceive, at least this is me saying it, this isn't anybody else, but this is just me saying it, a relative advantage on the field at Leadville because of his weird alien nature at altitude. Because of that, a pacing plan is very important to him because he's going to be spending a lot of that day alone, you know? And then for the rest of us, a pacing plan is so important. But then there's the rest of the pro field, like you said in the women's field, I think it really has evolved where it's like actually it might be good to kind of know your numbers just in case you find yourself on your own, but it becomes a relative race where you're having to base your effort off of your competitors. It totally seems like it's evolved that way. Even if Kate wasn't there and didn't set that incredible time that she set, I still think the race would have unfolded very similarly in the sense that it would have been very tactical and hard starting and all about the groups. So it's interesting to see it evolve. Like it probably keeps it fresh for you as a pro, right? That like the job is changing constantly like this.
Definitely. And I think it's fun to try and anticipate how that will turn out as well. Like, I think this year was a it was a new and unique year in that we had a bigger gap to the men's field. We weren't allowed to draft on the men's field. We had our own start. And it's the first time
What was that like?
it
That had to have
was
been, was it
it
totally
changed.
different, Leadville?
It was totally different. Everything was different. Um, and it was really comforting out there because you knew that it was you against all the other women, as it should be. You weren't constantly checking behind, making sure that someone wasn't getting a free ride up,
Yeah.
which is absolutely no shade on anybody out there. It's just how it's played out in the past. If it's
Yeah.
allowed,
Yep.
you have to take advantage of that. But now that it's not allowed, it is really nice to know that when those gaps form, you have to be the one to close it on your own. And so
hmm
I think that also opened an opportunity for a different racing style. It was curious whether it was going to split up early on and every woman for themselves, or if we would stay together longer and use each other a little bit longer, because we knew if we went up the road, we weren't going to have the hope of catching a man and using them. And so
hmm
it, I think it did play out differently than usual in that there were more groups across pipeline on the way out, but then it was mostly every man for themselves, at least in my portion of the race, on the way home
Oh, geez. When it was nice and windy.
when it was
I think
perfectly windy. And I do
I
think
want to.
that's an important thing to point out also, is for everyone out there who raced, even though times were so fast this year, it's my personal opinion that it wasn't a fast course year. That wind was
Agreed.
really, really intense. So if for whatever your reason your time wasn't exactly what you hoped, don't look at the pro field for confirmation as to what the course was like. The pro field was just absolutely ripping this year, as it continues to do, as we continue to do. We are just smashing records all over the place right now. But it was not a fast year. It was slow all around. That wind really sucked minutes away. So if you were going for a
Yes.
time goal and you fell short, take a moment to pause and reevaluate, because it might have still been a very heroic effort on your part.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Well said, Hannah. I want to touch on a point really quick with the pro. There's a responsibility that all of us, every single person on course, bears when there is a separate start for the pro women and pro men, and that is to yield. And I think that this is really important because I've even seen like some accusations coming out at a variety of different pro women, because at one point on the coverage, they saw a pro man somewhere around them.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, it is all of our job when we are on course to yield. And what I mean by that is that if a pro woman is riding and that pro woman is holding the best line and there is a rider in front of her, it is not the pro woman's fault. She shouldn't have to stop and slow down. She shouldn't have to get out of a different line. It's the other rider's job to get out of the way. And it's going to take some time, I think, for athletes to understand this. Like the pro men, for example, I think it's pretty easy for these guys to understand this. Like, hey, just move over, get out of the line, ease up on the pedals for 2 seconds. She's going to pass you, and then you can ride whatever line you want. But no more of this like riding in front of them and just like, oh, well, I have the line and I stick to it. And the same thing for amateurs too. Like we need to make sure that we respect the pro women's field when they have a separate start, because something's going to happen at these races in the next year or something where somebody's going to take a lot of shade or get penalized because of something that is totally out of their control. Like I'm just riding my race and these people won't get out of the way and I have nowhere to go. So what am I supposed to do? Am I just supposed to sit up? And I think that should change. And I think that is a responsibility that falls on all of us. Kudos to Stetna's race, Pay Dirt. They had like, there's the riders meeting where they talked about it. They talked about it on the actual rider guide. But then before the start, once everyone was there, they made it very clear. They said, because that one only has pro women, no pro men. And they said, everybody here, if you are not a pro woman, you are here as the assisting act, but you are not as the assisting act is the wrong word. As like, sounds bad, but it's kind of like, you're like the sideshow. Like the main event is the pro women. Don't get in the way of the pro women. If they are catching you, you get over and get out of the way, and then you can carry on. But you do not interfere with their race in any way. And I think that should be the case. And the same thing goes with the pro men too. If there's amateurs that are faster than the pro men and they're catching up from the pro men, got to ride your own race. It isn't always easy, but you got to do it. Because I just really don't want to see anybody get in a situation. Like, I even saw people calling out Kate because she was so fast and passing through the field, and people were calling her out as well, she was behind people up Columbine, and it's well, yeah, because it's a goat trail and it's a single path. You know what I mean? She couldn't get away with something other than that. She's just riding the line. So, anyways, that's a point I wanted to make. But back to your race, Hannah. Can I just touch on tires really quick? Because you said you're riding the Scott scale. Did you run bigger tires then, since you didn't have a full suspension bike? Were you running 2.4s?
Yep, I ran 2.4s just for a little added compliance. I kind of think in this race it goes one way or the other. If you ride a full suspension, you can get away with a narrower tire. But if you ride the hardtail, you go for a little bit of the wider tire for that added compliance, at least in my opinion. That's how I've always sort of viewed that choice there.
Yeah, completely agree. That's a smart choice. What would you do differently? I guess you mentioned the pacing side of things, now that the race is evolving into a bit of a knife fight instead of an individual time trial, you probably change that. Is there anything else that you would change, whether it's your nutrition, your equipment, your any sort of setup or approach?
I think mostly the pacing, to be honest. I'm really happy with my setup. I'm happy with my nutrition. I will say, I think I got behind in my nutrition at the start, and okay, I need to go back and own that. I would change my nutrition at the start. I think that I was able to salvage the situation well enough, which is something that has come with a lot of experience. But in the start, being what it is now, which is so hectic, and also being so cold, and then being in this total mindset of gotta catch up, all the cross pipeline, the idea of grabbing a bottle or grabbing food out of the back pocket when you're trying to be aero, it just feels I'm going to hold this position a little longer. I'm going to hold this position a little bit longer. You don't want to break that momentum or that aero position. And so I, all the way from the start until basically Columbine, I maybe did half of my nutrition plan. And so when I got to Columbine, I started to feel a little bit of that. At least for me, I'll get that shaky feeling, which again, this is where the experience comes in, because that shaky feeling comes and I know, hey, I know what this is. This is not a drill. It's time to buckle down rather than having panic. And so for me in that moment, I know that this is, like I said, this isn't a drill. It's now or never. You got to correct this or you will hit a point where it's uncorrectable. And so at that point, I had to shift my focus to prioritizing that nutrition. And I also knew just how high I could push it. And so I actually doubled down at that point, where I was ripping 2 of my first endurance liquid shots at once and eating 2 of them at once. And I know my body well enough that I can handle that. You can't PSA, you can't just oh, I'm not going to eat for the first 2 hours and then I'm going to eat 200 grams of carbs per hour. You can't just do that. But I do know where my upper limit was. And I was aware that this was a moment where I needed to do that. And I held on to that process for the remainder of the race, which saved me and allowed me to keep pushing forward. But there was definitely a time period, I would say, from Columbine all the way to Powerline, where I was pretty much living from one serving to the next, because I was so low that it was sugar, use it, need more sugar, use it, need more sugar. I had no stores left at that point. And so that's definitely something for next year that I think, it would be foolish to think that that didn't impact me in some capacity or another.
Yeah. Good. That's a really good lesson. Also crazy that this shows again to what Hannah said, don't try that at home. They're able to really refine and test that process.
But also don't give up. If you hit that point where you become aware, shoot, I messed up, slowly start to fix it. Slowly work through that process. Don't just say, oh, it's too late. I failed. Try and take on what you can because your body will respond to it. Just do it in an intelligent and measured approach.
And be patient with your body too,
Yes.
in the sense that like don't expect yourself that you can still hold the same power. Like ramp it down a bit. Like, set your expectations a little bit lower. And I think that that's super important. I actually had kind of like a similar experience on the way back from Columbine to Powerline where I had to like let groups go. I was just like trying, and then I found myself trying a bit too hard, and I was like, okay, this is going to make for a big implosion. Like I don't need to do this. I just need to stick within myself and I was riding right on that limit of taking in too many carbs, and I was getting a little gaggy. And so I was just like, all right, if I'm gagging, but I'm not throwing up, I'm probably in a good spot. So stay here, just keep doing it. And honestly though, I ended up catching the groups that dropped me later on. So, it's a lot of patience is involved, and trust in the process. Hannah, we were talking about something before we went on air. And actually it's kind of funny because we got some comments on it from our last podcast when we talked about passing and about me, about how, if I ask multiple times and you still don't allow, then I let them know, like, I'm going to force a pass and it's going to happen. And there was like a situation, I'm sure probably somebody's listening to the podcast and probably hates me now because of this, and I apologize. Don't let that reflect on TrainerRoad or anything else. But we had a situation where there were two people that were like kind of blocking off the Jeep trail descending down from St. Kevins, and I let them know multiple times that I was there and wanted to pass, and there was just zero response from them, like no acknowledgement, no anything. And eventually I was like, making a pass. And so I shot the gap in between the two of them, and one person was very upset, and his handlebars, touched my hip, and there was a blue streak that was cussed as a result of that. So toward me, I carried on and kept going. But I wanted to talk about this because this is like an interesting thing where it seems in retrospect that the athlete wasn't comfortable and was nervous and scared on the descent. And my pass made them even more nervous and scared. I really wish that athlete would have just mentioned at least anything, but at the very least, I wish that they would have mentioned like, hey, I'm nervous right now. Because then I probably could have just told them like, hey, like, no problem. Hit your brakes a little bit more for the next 10 feet. And then I'll just go in front of you and I'll show you the good lines. Or, hey, no problem. I'll take if that option isn't possible. All right, I'm just going to make sure that I give you as much space as possible. But when I don't hear anything after multiple attempts, I have to make the pass. Like it's going to happen. And nobody went down. Everyone was fine. It was safe. You know what I mean? But I thought, people have to, if somebody is saying something like that, you have to respond, right, Hannah? Like you got to say something.
It's all about communication. And this is, in the pro race, I don't expect anyone to communicate. Like we're all focused. There's an assumption that if I'm behind you, I want to pass, and vice versa. Like this is a professional race. I'm also going to assume that you're skilled enough to handle any passing. In the amateur race, this is not the case. We all need to speak. We all need to communicate. That's all it takes. Seriously, is a sentence. Because there's so many different levels out there. There's a lot of different understandings, a lot of different goals, a lot of different fears. But if you don't say anything, I have no idea where you are on that spectrum. And this applies not just to racing, but also trail etiquette in general. If I come up behind you on a trail casually in training and I say, hey, can I get around? And you don't respond, I don't know if you don't hear me. I don't know if you're being mean and having a bad day. Or I don't know if you're just thinking to yourself, I'll do it at the corner. Because if you're thinking, I'll let you pass at the corner, I'm more than happy to wait. And I'm guessing Jonathan in this case too, if he said, I'll do it at that corner and it's 10 seconds up the road, you probably would not have thought, I need those 10 seconds here at Leadville. I'm going to push by. You would have been like, okay, I'll wait, and then passed him there. But when there's no response, you just feel lost. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what you're wanting. For all I know, you're thinking, do it and stop telling me about it. And so it
Yeah.
just becomes a really difficult situation. So I just cannot advocate enough for please just communicate. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just, yeah, go ahead, or give me a second, or I'm a little nervous, or I'm going to hold my line. You do you, whatever, like just that communication. It really, it not only makes it a better personal experience, it also makes it safer because
Yeah,
I
for sure.
also know that you've heard me. And even if you say, yeah, go ahead and don't move at all, at least I know you know I'm coming. And so
Yeah.
you're not going to move into me or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Agreed. Apologies to the person that I made uncomfortable with my pass. So, I hope your day went well. Okay, Hannah. I want to actually. Can we cover some listener questions really quick? Then we're going to jump into the FKT.
Let's
Does
do
that
it.
work? Cool. We'll bounce back and forth. Okay. This one's from Damon. Damon submitted it at trainerroad.com/podcast. You can submit it down in the YouTube comments as well, or on Spotify. You can leave comments. You can leave it there, and we read through them every week. Pick the ones that we feel would be best for the coming week. Hannah says, or this Damon says, great podcast with Hannah Otto. I assume this was after a recent one. What info do you have on your headset? I assume you mean head unit when racing. And Hannah, I kind of like, does it vary for the event that you're doing?
I would say it varies what I use. I have a pretty standard couple screens and I'll move between them depending on the race, depending on how the race is going. And I say that because kind of like we're talking about with Leadville, if I'm on my own and I'm time trialing, that's a different scenario than if I'm in a group and the goal is just staying in the group, because whether it's too fast or too slow, it doesn't really matter. I'm in that group. But if I'm alone, then I might be using information to modulate my own effort. So yeah, I'm curious if we'll have any differences. I would say
Yeah.
the main
Use a
things.
Koros.
I have a Koros
Which-
Dura. Yep.
So, and you can adjust and change all the different screens and change the number of fields and all that stuff on there. Yeah. It's easy.
It's fully
Yeah.
personalized, so I can change anything that I want. And I do look at some things differently in training than I do in racing, but Damon specifically mentions racing. And so for racing, I will have time because that helps with fueling and also modulating effort.
Your elapsed time? Or
elapsed
is it
time.
elapsed time? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Mhm.
I'll have my 3-second power because I want to know what I'm doing right here, right now. That's a difference for me between training and racing. Is in racing, I don't look at normalized power or average power because for me, I don't care what is in the past and I don't care what is in the future. I am trying my hardest to ignore those things for me and focused on right here, right now. So I do the 3-second average power. And then I will also have one of the features I love on the Koros Dura is it gives me countdowns, and it'll count down either to checkpoints, like a feed zone, for example, or climbs. And so this is something that I personally use a lot, and it's interesting because I think us data nerds, we really hone in on data, but sometimes the purpose of data, at least for me, is just motivation. And that's pretty much purely what this is it's so helpful to, like, when you think of Leadville, it's a massive task. When you cut down a massive tasks into more manageable tasks, that's how you excel. And so cutting it down into, for example, it's telling me 10 miles to the next feed, that really helps me hone in on, okay, these next 10 miles, I'm going to think about these 3 things. And it helps me segment it. Same thing with Powerline. Man, that climb is such a beast. But when it beeps and says 3.8 miles to the top or whatever it is, and I can count down, okay, that was 1/10 of a mile, one more 10th of a mile, just hold this for one more 10th of a mile. For me, that really is everything for me. Like, that keeps me so focused and in the moment. So that's definitely a big feature that I focus on as well.
for mountain bike racing, like something like at Leadville, for example, main thing I have is a laps time up at the top, and then I have my 5-second power, and then I have my normalized power. And then I have climb, like the climbs pop up, and it just like when I'm going up the climb, it tells me like, where I'm at, and it shows me what's ahead. And that's really helpful on pacing. It also helps because it tells me the gradient of every section that's coming up. And I was kind of pacing my day based off gradient, more or less. So if I was within a certain window, I knew I needed to be within X to Y watts. And just kind of that's how I paced the whole thing going through. If I'm training, it's different. Well, actually, if I'm racing XCO, it's also different. So with XCO, like the main thing I'm interested in is like a lapse time. And then I really don't have much else from there. I have a lapse time, and then I have my 5-second power. And then down below that, I think I have normalized power down there, but I never really pay attention to that because usually in an XCO race, I'm never fortunate to be just like breaking away from a field and riding all alone, worrying about pacing. It's always, I'm just like bleeding out my eyes. So, but when I get into criteriums, I have a different setup that I use. So for a criterium, I have my 5-second power. I have my normalized power. Then that's really important to me. I have speed, which is very important. And then I have a lapse time. And then I have another screen where I can view like laps. And I use laps actually pretty regularly in criteriums if there's any sort of breakaway opportunity or anything else. And I use laps to figure out how long the laps are taking me. And then I run like the basic math in my mind. I'm like, okay, so if we average this speed and that equals this time, in order to get a gap that is going to get us out of sight, we need X amount of seconds. So like it really helps me kind of break that down. But speed is really important in a criterium and like a lot of road races because it helps me understand how the group is moving and then what the differential would need to be in order to be getting a gap. And that's super, super helpful. And then in training, I have like a separate screen that has, I use 10-second power when I'm training outside, smooth to that. And I have all my workouts for TrainerRoad just send to my bike computer, whether it's my Hammerhead or my Garmin, whatever it is. If it's I don't think we do Coros yet, but a Hammerhead or a Garmin. And on those, and a Wahoo, I have time left in the interval. I have my power target, which is usually a range. And then so it kind of just looks like a TrainerRoad screen. And then I have what my current power is. And then I have cadence on there. And that's like all I care about. And when I can see that, then I have all the information that I need, So it varies depending on, and then like for racing, I do have like a map screen and I have it set up so that I still have the other information, and I have everything set up so that if I'm not running a dropper post, my bottom left button on my controller moves my screen. If I do a short click, it moves it to the right. If I do a long press, it moves it to the left. Forgive me. Either way, whatever the ways are, left and right is hard. But it allows me to do it that way. And then I also have it set up so that for like the dropper or for the dropper post and then the flight attendant, I can change up those controls. Then I can control my head unit remotely too. Because on mountain bikes and stuff, sometimes if you really need to see a screen, but you're sketchy in a sketchy section, you can't adjust it on the fly. So
maps. I was going to add that. I always have the map up, and like you said, as a split screen is important because if you start scrolling and it's not in that split screen mode, you will miss a turn. Been there, done that. Like you need to always have the map up, in my opinion.
But do you set alerts on yours?
Sometimes, yeah. It depends on the course. Sometimes, there's too many corners. It's just like too many.
Or do you set up custom alerts for like whether it's like focus reminders or nutrition or anything else like that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I know some people do, but yeah. I am curious. So when you look at, say, normalized power in the race, because I think this is important for people to hear. Let's say you get an hour and a half in to a long race like Tahoe Trail or Leadville, and it's 20 watts too high or 20 watts too low. What are you doing? Because I think it's important for people to know if it's 20 watts too low, you don't just jump up
Yeah.
40 watts to try and pull
No.
it.
No.
So
Well,
hopefully you're
this
not
had
going to say that.
Yeah, this exact thing happened at Leadville where I was like so I was 10 minutes at the top of Sugarloaf. I was 10 minutes ahead of my predicted schedule and I was like, "Oh no. That's really bad." And like it's funny because I've told some people about that don't race and they're like, "Oh, that's great." And I'm like, "No, it was
Congratulations.
I'm like, no, that means I'm deep in a hole. Like I'm going to have to pay the price later on, you know?" It meant that I had gone too hard. So in that case, I did look down at my MP and I was like, my MP is too high.
Mhm.
I need to drop it down. But I did not just suddenly start riding bottom of endurance or something. I just made sure I was like, okay, I have these ranges. When I'm able, I'll ride at the bottom of these ranges instead of riding at the top. But really, above all, I just need to focus on efficiency. Like, let's not surge out of corners. I like kind of like I'm on thin ice, you know, like, so let's behave like it. So try to find draft wherever I can. Be really picky about your line choice and make sure that you aren't picking lines that slow you down and cause you to have to produce more power. It's like, it just lets me know that it's just like if a plane is flying from point A to point B and it sees that it's off course, it isn't going to instantly backtrack and go back to where it should have been, then restart. It's just going to shift by 1 degree. And then by the time they get to their destination, that 1 degree shift will be enough to get them there. You know, I just use it as kind of like a barometer almost, like a suggestion. And then you adjust from there.
Mm-hmm.
I have had it though, like in certain races, like cross country Olympic, criteriums, that sort of thing, it can be really detrimental to some people to look at that normalized power. Like kind of like what you said, living in the past or in the future. Like if you look down at that normalized power and it's just like all time high and you're like 3/4 of the way through the race, your brain's gonna go one of two ways. One way, it's gonna go, I'm Superman. Look what I'm doing. I'm invincible. And hubris is probably gonna take advantage of you at some point very soon. Or it goes the other way where you're like, I can't sustain this. When really it'd be better just to focus on the race and approach it with curiosity and react to what's happening around you and do it that way. But for a long paced effort, something like a Leadville, I do think that it's more important to look at that and use it for some sort of adjustment.
Well, I think it's important to understand in that moment that the data, like I always say, data informs perception. And so it's not that you're looking at the data and then deciding how you feel, but it's so if you look at your power and it's way too high, and then you're like, oh my gosh, it's so hard. Yeah, it is hard because look what you're doing. That's amazing. Okay, it makes sense. It's all in line. Or if the opposite happens and you look at your power and it's low, but it's still hard, that sometimes can be the hardest one for people to stomach. But to me, that's, okay, this is data. This is information. So why is this happening? Is it because I'm underfueled? Is it because I'm dehydrated? Do I need to focus on my cadence, right? Like this is a data point that you can then use to move yourself forward. It's not, please, it is not, oh, I'm having a bad day. That's the last thought that you should at least try to have enter your mind, because it's just information. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It isn't dictating what's happening in your day. It's giving you it's a tool to help you correct in real time.
Yeah, you can't let a moment seal the fate of the day, right? You just can't. If you do, then especially these long races, you're just going to miss out on so many opportunities. If I had done that at the top of Sugarloaf, I'd be like, oh no, today's going to just explode. And I turned that out of my head, and instead I just focused on being efficient. And then probably about 1 million other seconds throughout that race. If I would have let those seconds decide the outcome, I wouldn't have even finished. So, that's how it goes. Hannah, I want to jump into Josh's question, and then we're going to go to Jeff's. Then we're going to talk about the FKT. It's going to be great.
Yay.
Okay. Josh says, hey, TrainerRoad team, upcoming A race at Gravel Worlds in Lincoln, Nebraska. Looking at the routes, it looks to be nothing but short rollers all day long. I think Hannah's looking at that race thinking the same thing. I was wondering if you had some tips for pacing an effort like this. I find myself doing threshold VO2, I think he's saying that like, if I find myself doing threshold and VO2 repeats all day, which obviously isn't sustainable. I think that he's saying that like that would be really bad. So any help would be appreciated. Feel free to review my account and training history if that's helpful. Love TrainerRoad and all that you guys do. So I looked at Josh's account, by the way, Hannah, and Josh is, I think, so what his plan has, even like in the next few days, he has a day where he's doing like these sets of like high threshold to low VO2 variable like duration kind of like sets that are like perfect for this sort of thing, where it's like the rollers that are going to last somewhere between 30 seconds to a minute, 30 seconds to 3 minutes, and you're having to just like do repeated efforts within a short set like that. That's great. It also has you doing these like these harder, shorter like VO2 efforts with these little breaks in between them. So it's like, whereas normally it would be like a 4 to 5 minute VO2 effort, it's splitting that up with like a short like 15-second break in between, which is great. So your training plan is building you up for repeatable power, which is great. But pacing it, Hannah, I almost shudder to use the word pacing, because it's hard to pace in these scenarios, especially if you're trying to stick with a group. So I kind of want to take this two ways. Hannah, how would you pace this race if you are racing it? And then how would you suggest somebody pace this race if they aren't necessarily focused on finishing ahead of a specific person, but instead they're trying to have their best day? Do the two differ?
Well, if I'm racing it in the pro field, this is what it's going to be. It's going to be VO2 repeats, and it's going to be a race of who blows up last, basically. Like, and it will steady out. Like towards the end, they won't be, 120% of power, because you're right, it isn't sustainable. But because of drafting and because the gaps form and then are harder to close, that's how it's going to play out. Is in the pro field, it will be repeated efforts. It's 30-30s or 60-60s or whatever the hills dictate. It's going to be that. And so exactly what Jonathan's saying, you train for that. And that's just how that works. If you're not racing to win, that's not how you should race it, because it is a somewhat inefficient way to race, and it's the hardest possible way to race. That's why we do it, because we're trying to break each other.
Yes.
But if you're just trying to finish or trying to get your personal best time, you shouldn't race it like that. Instead, you're going to go for maximum efficiency. And so your power might be a little bit higher on these climbs than, say, if it was a flat. Like if you're holding 0.7 IF for this race, probably a little lower because it's so long, but let's go with 0.7 IF for this race. Then the rollers, you might be at 0.8, 0.85, maybe even 0.9, because on the backside, you're going to be lower. And so it will be sort of this on and off effort regardless, but it shouldn't be 120% zero. Because again, that's so inefficient. And so know that you are going to go a little harder on those, but then you're going to go a little easier on the backside. And the most important thing to think about in this type of racing is the efficiency of that effort. And so are you getting to the top of the climb, sitting up, stopping pedaling, and slowly rolling over the backside? That is going to suck time and energy. Are you getting to the bottom of the climb, taking this huge sigh, shifting, and then starting your journey up? Or are you shifting while you're descending, getting your cadence up, getting up to speed, and rolling with momentum for halfway up that climb? Sometimes these rollers, you find you actually only have to work for half of them because you have so much speed from the backside. This is the most efficient way to race. It's the easiest way to race, and it's the fastest way to race. And so you can use your power to make sure you're not going too hard. But to me, the biggest thought process you should be having during this race is more focused on carrying momentum and speed up and over the top and through the bottom of every roller.
Oh, so well said, Hannah. Not enough athletes do that. They see the climb coming and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna rest for a bit until it hits me, and then I'll go." And you just make the climb so much harder for yourself. So great advice there, Hannah. There comes a decision point for every racer when you have to decide if you're going to stick to that strategy or stick with this group or this rider that you're with. And just know that the majority of riders will not be racing this way. The majority, particularly early on, they're going to be surging very hard, doing anaerobic efforts up these short rollers. And that is, unless for you have a crazy high threshold and those efforts are easy, it's a bad idea. Like, just don't do it. So, this is, I think, if you're a bigger rider with a bigger threshold, you really need to focus on momentum in particular, because it's going to stop you from having to put out such high peak power. And if there are riders that are pushing it harder than you want to push, you need to let them go, because you're actually going to have a faster day if you stick to this pacing plan, like Hannah said, unless it's like, 40-mile-an-hour headwinds the whole day or something. But otherwise, you're probably going to have a faster day. So it's a bit of a tricky thing, because it feels very counterintuitive and you feel like you're losing time anytime you go onto a roller, but it's actually faster in the long run. It's the same principle as sag climbing. So like with sag climbing, you want to carry momentum. If the group, like you want to move yourself to the front of the group as the climb is beginning and carry your momentum up, and then allow yourself to drift back through that group. So then over the top of the climb, you're at the back. And that way you've utilized the length of the group to maximum efficiency to allow yourself to save energy while still not getting dropped. Mm-hmm. This is like the same. You kind of want to sag climb every roller by yourself, thinking of momentum as your key thing that you have to follow. So it's all about, okay, like when you get over the top of a roller, think, I could probably carry on this power that I'm doing here, drop it by 20% or something, and I could probably carry this on, grab a few gears, and then when you hit the next roller, you'll be like, wow, that wasn't as bad as when I just coast down the thing. So, yeah, really good advice, Hannah. Are you doing that race?
I'm not. I'll be preparing for marathon world championships in Switzerland.
Ooh,
yeah.
Exciting. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm really excited for that one. Cool. Very cool. Let's do the last question from Jeff, then we're going to get into the FKT. Jeff says, 2 years now on TrainerRoad. He says, man, that's a lot of sweat and tears on my trainer. I successfully met my goals at Leadville last year in large part due to the structured training of TrainerRoad and during those sessions watching these podcasts. I've learned so much of all aspects of mountain bike racing from you and your guests. Thank you. I qualified for Leadville again this year, but decided to defer it to do the Breck Epic instead. My question is about everything stage racing, the pacing, day-to-day recovery and nutrition. Then there's equipment, spares, all the other great stuff that you, or for advice that they gave for Leadville. So he says, thank you. He also mentioned that he did Tahoe Trail 100 and didn't have a chance to say hi, but looks forward to that someday. Cool, Jeff. Likewise. Hannah, you always start your season, it seems like, with stage races. Sometimes you bookend your season with stage races. Just some basic tips. Breck Epic is going on right now. Jeff's in the thick of it. He's trying to find oxygen. Poor guy, somewhere up there. What I think, like, let's talk about the things you do in between stages in particular. Are there certain things that you always focus on doing in order to get better? And those that don't do stage races, listen to this advice, because it also really helps with a training schedule as well.
Yeah, this is a huge question. I've done Breck Epic, I've done BC Bike Race, I've done the Mediterranean Epic several times, La Ruta. I've done lots of stage racing, and mountain bike stage racing. So there's a lot of things we could talk about here. But to talk about just the recovery and nutrition aspect, in my personal opinion, the most important, I'm like pausing, I'm like, can I say the word most? Yes, I think so. I think the most important thing from day to day in the stage race is what happens in the 30 minutes to 1 hour after you cross the finish line each day. I think people get really hung up on like the nighttime routine, which we'll talk about and is important. But to me, the 30 minutes to 60 minutes after you cross that finish line is everything, because it is so easy to finish and talk to your friends and run around and be in your kit and sit in the grass. And I get it. I've done it. I've made that mistake. I've gotten sucked in. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, I haven't eaten anything and I'm so bonked. And how am I going to catch up on these calories? So it's all about setting that momentum. It's about crossing the finish line and getting some sort of carbohydrate in the first 30 minutes. Usually it's easiest if that's a drink. Juice, a Coke, like if you're organized enough and smart enough, ideally an actual recovery drink that's mixed up. And then it's about changing and starting to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, because what happens at night and your ability to recover at night is gonna be contingent on how you were able to lower your intensity post race. I know we've all felt that, where sometimes it's fun, like in a stage race element. Sometimes I love riding that high. Like after Leadville, it's like the whole day, the rest of the evening, you go to dinner, and then you're like laying in bed at night and you're like, man, I can't even sleep. I'm still buzzing. And sometimes that's fun. Not super fun at a stage race because you're like laying in bed with your eyes wide open. I have to wake up in 6 hours, in 5 hours, in 4 hours. So the only way you're going to be able to truly rest is if you start lowering that intensity right away, calming down, eating, relaxing, telling your body, hey, we're done. We're all good. It's time to rest.
I think modulating your emotions really helps, like controlling them in a stage race. Don't let the highs get you too high. Don't let the lows get you too low. There's always tomorrow, and having that sort of like perspective through it really helps give you the clarity to make the sort of decisions, the right decisions like Hannah's talking about. Like if you have an awesome time, I'm not saying like don't act like it wasn't great or something, but if you had a great ride, like acknowledge that, be stoked about it, but then just think about the next day. Because then that will put you in that mindset to make those right decisions. One thing, Hannah, that you mentioned, like on the recovery drink, a change that I've made in my day-to-day training, because I think that these same things are really helpful when you have a challenging training load, and just like one change that I feel so proud of myself every time I do it is, because we all make our bottles before we ride, and I've now started to make my recovery drink before I ride too, and I just put that in the fridge. And also like just like as a side note, protein powder always kind of takes a little time to like fully dissolve anyway. So like it's always annoying when you're drinking your mix and then like you get like a little like chunk of like non-blended stuff. If you leave it in there, go and do your training, you come back, it's perfectly smooth every time. But it just feels so good to come back and just be like, oh, it's already ready. And with stage racing, there's these like, you can get like cooler backpacks that aren't crazy expensive. They don't have to be like one of these like Yeti ones that are like $500 or something. You can go to like Walmart and get some that are probably going to be a whole lot cheaper. I got an Igloo one, and then for Leadville, and then I had like a Columbia one, but they didn't break the bank. Those little coolers can be super helpful for stage races too. You can throw your recovery drink in there already pre-mixed and some stuff to take in right after. Throw in some ice in that bag, and it's going to keep everything cold. So then when you get back, it's going to be like cold and refreshing too. So just like little mechanical tips to support what Hannah's talking about. I feel like it really helps.
I do think it's important also to understand what's happening in your body after these events, because some people don't have other support crews. And so if they are hoping for their unique and special recovery drink, they'd have to wait until they get back to their room or whatever. And so they're left with whatever food they have at the finish line, which every stage race I've ever done has some sort of food at the finish. But I know it's not always the food you want. Sometimes it doesn't even feel like the best food. You're looking at it like, this is athlete food, or where's my protein? Because everyone's so focused on the protein for recovery, which is important. But what you just burned out there is glycogen. Like that's the first thing actually that you need to replace. And so when you go to that athlete tent and you're looking at all the food options, eat a cookie, eat a donut, eat a muffin, get those calories and those sugars in immediately. Then that gives you the buffer to ride back to your hotel, to drive back to your hotel and get in the like quote unquote quality ingredients through a real meal or your protein drink. But
Yep.
you need
Great,
that buffer
great
time.
tip.
You really need, it doesn't have to look good or fancy. That's why I like Coke, juice, like I said, a muffin. This isn't like, oh, I'm celebrating. This is actual recovery. It's your chance to take advantage of these foods that actually will help you recover the next day.
Yeah, great point. You mentioned the balance of parasympathetic and sympathetic here. And what I've found is that after stage races, and even after, like in the middle of training, like after a stage or after a training session, I try to take all the things that could put me into a sympathetic state and make sure that I take care of those after training, right after training, rather than letting them drift out. So that looks like in a stage race, it's like cleaning your bike, cleaning your shoes, laying everything out for the next day, going through that process. I try to do it as close as I can to after the race. So then that way my body has a big, long, uninterrupted time in a parasympathetic state. Because if I haven't done that and I'm trying to relax, it's going to weigh on my mind. I'm not going to get the most benefit. I'm not really going to drop into a fully parasympathetic state because my mind's constantly turning on, well, you've got to do this and you've got to do that and and it makes it so that I can't actually get all the benefits that I think I'm getting. So I always try to like pack it all in, get it all done. So then that way, literally the only thing I have to do after that is to eat my meal and lay down and sleep. And that's it. I don't know if you have a similar approach, Hannah, but that's really been helpful for me. And with training, it looks like the next day, I charge my bike computer. So then I make sure that that's there. I make sure that if there's a problem with my bike that I encountered out on the ride, that I take care of it then. Or if I need to clean my bike, I clean it right after. And that way, it's just, there's less barriers in between me and that training.
Yeah, to me, it's all about kind of manipulating the time frame. Because what can be really overwhelming with stage racing is the way that it kind of all starts to feel like it snowballs. Like, I just finished and now I'm waking up and now I'm like, and so stretching that time, like you're saying, if you're done with the race and laying on the couch by 4 p.m., and hopefully this is a time you're able to like take off from work and you're not trying to like work remote or something at the same time. Laying on the couch from 4 p.m. till 8 p.m. when you maybe start going to sleep is a really long time. A really long time. And so the ability to, the way I always do it is if I can become bored between stages, I've succeeded. That's how I know that I've usually hit my goal. Because if I have enough time that I'm feeling bored, it means it doesn't have that panicky sensation that sometimes it will get where like, oh my God, like I said, like I'm racing and now I'm sleeping and now I'm waking up and I'm racing and it just never stops and I can't catch my breath. If I can become bored, breath has been caught.
Yeah, well said. Let's one more, because we've covered, I think, a lot of like the nighttime routine stuff in the past with you and all that stuff. I do want to cover how you pacing a stage race. That might be a bit different for somebody that isn't racing for the pointy end, like you, Hannah. What advice would you give to athletes in terms of pacing themselves through a stage race? Should they be shooting for a 9 out of 10 every day? Should they be shooting for a specific number like that? Or what would your advice be?
Yeah. It for sure depends on the stage race, because everyone is different. And that's an important thing to understand is sometimes, for example, like La Ruta that I did, the first stage was 2.5 hours. Then the second stage was 5 hours. And the last stage was 7.5 hours. So
Oh my gosh.
that's a little bit different than, say, Breck Epic, where every day is pretty similar. And the last day is actually the shortest and easiest. Also more day. So it's important, first of all, I would say, to understand the course and what you're tackling and what each day will bring. But you should finish every day feeling like you have something in the tank. So it's modulating that effort to understand that it was hard and it was uncomfortable, but it was doable. And I think for most people, that's important on a variety of levels. One, because that's also a sign that you probably didn't deplete all of your energy stores. And two, just because psychologically, that makes it feel possible. If you finish at the end of your rope every day, you might psychologically fall into
Yeah.
this hole of feeling like there's just no way. There's just absolutely no way.
Yeah.
I think for
Listen back
us,
to our Cape Epic
yeah,
episodes and you'll hear me
yeah.
at the end of my rope every single day.
I
It
think
was rough.
I think for us pros, like we do race these stage races, like every day is its own race. And part of that is because we have the recovery dialed. Part of that is because we've trained that. We do back-to-back sessions in training. And part of that, again, is the psychology of it. We know what that feels like. And we know when we're lying on the ground after a sprint finish on stage 1 that, yeah, this is how it goes and I can do it again tomorrow. But for
Yeah.
the vast majority of people, it's important to leave something in the tank so that you are lining up with the encouragement and confidence within yourself that you can keep going. And I'd like to add the caveat that you will feel bad in the morning when you wake up. You just
Yeah.
will. It just
Yep.
is what it is. And you go anyways, and you can do it anyways, and that's fine. Like, and I cannot tell you how many times I have surprised myself. Like at La Ruta, when I woke up on the last day, the stage started at 5 a.m. So I woke up at 3 on the third day of a 3-day stage race for a 7.5-hour day. And I remember looking at Clayton and being like, I really don't think I can do this today. I
Yeah.
feel so bad. I can't eat anything. I'm going to throw up. I can't. And he was like, I feel like this is going to be your best day yet. That was his response. And you know what? It was. And if I
There we go.
had just rolled it in right there and cashed it in right there because of how I felt when I woke up in the morning, what a bummer. You're gonna feel like trash when you wake up in your bed. But come hour 2 or 3 out on course, it might totally come around. So I would just say in stage racing, never pack it in, never give up. Every day is gonna feel different. Every day is gonna be hard in its own way. But your feelings, your emotions, they are ever changing. Ever changing. You might feel like you're going to cry 1 minute and then be like, I'm the fastest person on this course the next minute.
Yeah.
And you just have to embrace those ups and downs.
I think you so well said, Hannah. The thing that I would add to this for mountain bike stage racing that's unique is that if there is a spot where you are going to modulate it a bit, I would think in most mountain bike stage races, try descending it like an 8 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 instead of your 10 out of 10.
It's good advice.
Because it's probably not going to make or break your results. In terms of like or I shouldn't say it's probably not going to transform your result into something hugely positive, but absolutely could break it. And the fatigue that we have, sometimes we don't realize how fatigued we are and it slows up our reaction and makes us a bit sloppy. And that really can punish us on descents. But if you're descending at like a 7 or an 8 out of 10, it's well within yourself. So you have a bit of room for mistakes and it's a bit okay. But what Hannah said is so true. In every stage race, I wish I had the luxury of deciding that I'm going to go easier today and then I'll like pick it up at a different point. Usually I'm always pushed to my limits just to finish the course or just to try to hold the position that I want to hold. But it's so important, like Hannah said, to not just judge your day by how you feel in the beginning. You just have to approach each day with, let's see how it goes. Because, like for, I think the last day of Cape Epic, I felt maybe the best out of all of them. And if you had asked me the day before or 2 days before, I would have thought you were certifiably insane because I was at new lows. I had never felt so terrible. And it just kept getting worse every day. It's like that quote from Office Space. And it's like when he's at the therapist and he's like, so you remember when yesterday was the worst day of my life? That's what it is every day. So that's basically what I was going through. And then sure enough, it was like the best day was at the end. So you do have to approach it with some curiosity. Hannah, I want to talk about your White Rim FKT. This route is an FKT, for those that don't know, fastest known time. It's not an official race. Traditionally, FKTs are like unsupported typically, and it's just the athlete going out against the course and trying to set the fastest time. It's a concept that's popular in endurance mountain biking and endurance trail running, in particular. Those two spots, it's quite popular. The white rim, the first I remember it, I think was Pete Stetna setting a time on it, maybe, and then Payson sometime. Maybe it was both of them. I can't remember. But Payson definitely had one, and then I remember Keegan taking it, and then I remember Amity Rockwell having it, and then Reese Ruland took it from her, and then Alexis Skarda took it from her, and that was all back in like 2020. And I think that was, COVID. Everyone was doing FKTs because races disappeared, and then FKTs still exist and people still do them. And you have done the whole enchilada, climbing up from Moab all the way to the La Salles and then all the way down the whole enchilada. And then you've also done the Cocopelli Trail. We discussed that one the last time you did it. And then now you've done the White Rim. So you've got like the Triple Crown down there. And Competitive Cyclist has produced videos all about this. I want to cover this really quick. The previous record was 6 hours, 57 minutes, and 17 seconds by Alexis Skarda, and you did 6 hours, 36 minutes, and 51 seconds. So you chopped out 20 minutes out of that time. This course is like hard. How long is it, Hannah? Is it 100 miles? It's close to 100 miles?
It's almost exactly 100 miles.
And it's not smooth either, right? Like, it's got smooth sections, but it's got extremely rough sections and hard climbs.
It is shockingly demanding. So we did pre-ride it before I did the FKT. I went down in March and I pre-rode it. And then I did this FKT on May 2nd. And when we pre-rode it in March, I thought I was going to do this on a hardtail. Because it's not a super quote unquote technical effort, but it's very physically demanding. The first half of it is primarily through sandy washes. In the case of my FKT, pretty thick sand, actually, where you're surfing in some sections. And then the second half, you get the relief from that sand, but you enter into sort of rock slab riding, which if you've ever ridden that, it's really fun, but it's really harsh because it's never just perfectly flat and slick. You're constantly undulating. Your back tire is your back wheel, back end is getting kicked up. You're having to use your whole body to sort of maintain that speed and momentum. And so it was after that pre-ride that I said, absolutely not. I'm not riding hardtail on that. I'm going to ride my Scott Spark for a full suspension, because even though it wasn't needed for the technicality, say like the whole enchilada, it was very, very much needed for efficiency and compliance.
So when you rode this in May, where you were training for Unbound, I would assume, did you do anything specific for your training for an effort that's going to be 6 hours and 46 minutes with a crucial climb toward the end and steady diesel power the entire day? Did you do anything specific for this, or was it kind of just like it fell in line well with Unbound?
A little bit of both. So I think, as a racer, this is the time frame that I race most often in that 6 hour range. So I'm very well adapted to this type of effort. Obviously, I'm always working on raising my FTP, which is essentially what you need in this. Like, my normalized power and my average power were, I think, within 10 watts for this effort.
Wow.
Because
that's really even pacing.
Yes, a very steady day on the pedals, almost zero coasting, it felt like. And so it is, but I think FKTs in general really suit me. I'm very adapted to this type of work. I love just sitting on the limit. It's one of my favorite things. And like you said, we're calling this 3 FKT mission that I've been on the Triple Crown. And this is something that we've been working on for 4 years now. When I first did the whole enchilada in 2022, we had the plan of ideally and hopefully completing all 3 of these efforts. And I saved the White Rim for last because it is so optimized. Like you said, so many people have done it at this point, and Alexis, who had it before me, had done it multiple times to get her time down. And so I knew that every second and every minute would really count out there. And I wanted to use the experience that I gained from the whole enchilada and from the Coco Pelli to really nail this one. And I think it took everything I learned on the front end, optimizing equipment and that self-supported effort, because it is very different than racing to try and decide what you need and what to carry. And then also the focus. I cannot emphasize the element of focus in these efforts, because there is no one around. There's no one to rely on or pace off of, or, oh, they're attacking, that's a different stimulus. It's once I push off to start this, I don't speak to anyone. I don't it's just me, my bike, and my pacing plan. And it's very easy to come off in a different world of thought, a different negative mindset, or distractions are both positive and negative. And for this effort on this day, it was focusing on every single pedal stroke.
Yeah, for 6 hours and 46. It's a long time.
Yes,
yeah.
It is.
So, Hannah, I want to ask about training really quick. You mentioned sitting on the limit all day, sort of a thing. Is this like high endurance all day, like tempo sort of stuff? And did you do were you doing a lot of sweet spot style, threshold, high endurance training sessions around this time?
Yeah, so I raced Sea Otter, and then I raced the Whiskey 50, and then I did this the following weekend. So it was the third weekend of 3 weekends of racing. So this sort of kicked off my Unbound training. I also did the same thing with the Coco Pelli and used it as a huge, hard day out to train for Unbound. But it was also coming off the winter, which is a lot of, obviously, base training, raising of FTP, focusing on those sweet spot efforts. So the timing of this, and that's an important note in these FKTs for me that I've had to work through in these years of planning and processing, is as a racer, there's only so many times that I can do these and fit them into the schedule. And so I have to be really strategic, and not only with course conditions out there, but also with my body and when I'm optimized to do this, both in racing and in my ability to actually go and succeed.
Yeah. Aero optimizing would have to be something that you were thinking of with this. Did you do anything to your bike or your equipment to change your position or make yourself more efficient?
I just spent a lot of time practicing riding in that more aero position, because it does take a big load on, for example, my triceps are what always feel it so hard, especially on this type of terrain, because it's not like the type of terrain where you can really puppy pause it, because you are bouncing around. And so you would lose your front wheel. But speeds are so high that you need to be aero a large majority of the time. And so I spent a lot of this FKT with my hands right next to the stem in a ball for that aero optimization. And of course, I picked my more aero equipment, like my Eclipse Giro helmet, for the aero helmet, aero socks. But then that's where it does become something you have, to me, this is what I love about FKTs. It's such a puzzle because it is unsupported. You then have to think through, well, I have to carry everything. And so, for 6.5 hours, I have to carry all my water. How can I make that as aero as possible and also as light as possible, and also not completely dehydrate myself to the point of impacting performance? And so hydration was one of the most interesting puzzle pieces in this entire equation of trying to figure out just how low or how little I could carry and get away with.
How much did you carry, and how'd you
I
carry
ended
it?
up carrying 3 liters of water, or fluids, I
Wow,
should say.
fluid.
So 3 liters of fluids across 6.5 hours is far below my needs, but
You were
I was able
dry.
to get away with it. And part of that goal is this effort does end on the Schaefer climb, which is a huge climb coming out of Canyonlands. And so I wanted to carry as little as I needed or as possible up that at the end,
Mhm.
which meant I had to time my fluid intake perfectly. And when I hit Schaefer, I essentially had 2 sips left of water, one for the bottom
Oh.
and one for the top, which
Oh.
is terrifying. It's so scary. You're so thirsty. But to me, that's perfect planning because that meant I
Mm.
carried the least amount of weight I could up that climb.
So do you have liter bottles on your frame and then, like, I guess you probably couldn't have fit 2-liter
I
bottles
can
on your
only
frame,
fit
huh?
1 liter on my bike, so I did 1 liter on my bike, and then I had a Usui pack that was 2 liters.
So big 2-liter reservoir then on the back then, yeah.
Yeah, they're like it's the same one I used at Unbound. So
Okay.
their 2-liter pack is like a pretty
Compact.
compact, that's the word, that I'm
Yeah.
looking for. But yeah, a pretty compact system, which is really nice for these FKTs. But yeah, it's not a lot to have, but I can't carry a lot else on me without having to get
Yeah.
super creative or really limiting my speed.
It's awesome. The video's live now. People can go check it out.
Yes, please check it
And
out. It's on the Competitive Cyclist YouTube channel. We highlight this FKT as well as recap the last 3 that I've done and how that's changed me as a person. Because this is certainly, like I said, it's been a 4-year project. So this has been my heart and my soul. And I hope everyone can find motivation and inspiration from it.
that's awesome, Hannah. Very well done. Very cool. We'll link to that down below in the description so people can check it out. Do you have any other FKTs that you have planned? Of course, you probably can't say if you do have them planned, but
I do. We actually are
ooh,
already
exciting.
planning the next one.
Yeah.
I cannot say what it is, as you said, but yeah, like this, the process of going for these FKTs is something that, like I said, it's really changed me. It's helped me redefine my limits. It's helped me redefine what hard really is. And I think it makes me a better racer as well. So it's something that in my racing career and in my life, I love doing because I just love that opportunity to see how far you can push the envelope. And that's one reason why I really do encourage people to go and try these things. Not necessarily fast, even slow. I mean, these trails will challenge you no matter how like
Yeah.
do it in 3 days. It'll still be a great challenge, but that challenge will change you and it will impact parts of your life far beyond cycling. And to me, that's what the sport is all about, is making you a better human being.
That's truth. That's awesome. That's what we all focus on here at TrainerRoad. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. That's hugely beneficial. And you can go sign up for TrainerRoad. We just focus on making everybody faster because we believe that if you're faster, life is better. That's how it goes. So you can do that at TrainerRoad.com. Hannah, thank you so much. Go check out Hannah's Instagram. Go watch the FKT video that we just mentioned. It'll be linked down below. You can check that out, and we will talk to you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.